Welcome to the Moments That Matter podcast. On this series, we are going to interview some of the top performers both in sport, business, and life to get inside the mindset of how they've got to where they are today, the lessons, the journeys, the understandings, and the practical takeaways we can take away from their journey to help us perform in the moments that truly matter. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Moments That Matter podcast. On today's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by a very special guest, Brendan Ring. Brendan Ring is a good friend. From a couple of years ago, we met at an event that we done, and the day that I met him was a day that I knew I met someone very special who was on a very special journey along with his wife Terry to try and impact to people's lives in moments that actually really do matter. So, Brendan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan.
Great to have you on.
Delighted to be here.
Good. You came from Limerick today.
Yeah. Well, I was a passenger. My son brought me up in record time. So, Callum, I asked him to do the driving, so he said he would. So, give me a bit of time to
study all the questions now.
No, Dan. You threw me a curveball this morning. Didn't get a chance to give out to you yet.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, but
well, as we probably, I'm sure, will talk about today, life can be full of curveballs at times. But you have an amazing story that some people listening today will probably know. I'm sure a lot of them won't. And yourself and Terry, as I was saying there earlier, and so many other amazing people involved, and your family are doing amazing things as well. But the first question I'd love to ask you, which is what we ask every guest, is what does performing in moments that matter mean to you?
I suppose even today, right, there are stuff going on in my life, you know, and I suppose the most important thing is to turn up and be there, you know, for people in your lives that might need your help. And we can develop that, but that mightn't just have got to do with my own business or the work we do in cleaners. It's just about life itself and your family, which is so important, and your friends, that I just find that if you're there for them, you mightn't have the answers. Just to turn up and be there and be yourself. And I think gut instinct is very important. And I know a lot of people say, you know, you should go with your gut. I think the further I go on in my life, I think the more, whether it's the experience or not, I think I'm listening to more of that. And more than likely, that stands the test of time, that you just kind of have an inner feeling. But I don't think you can get that if you haven't got a certain type of personality or a certain type of empathy for people and their situations. I suppose turning up for me sometimes can be difficult on myself, being in situations that I feel maybe that can be overwhelming for me, but they help me to grow as well. And I do have a tendency to take on people's problems and really take them on. Not just say, oh, I really understand that then, and that's how I feel about it. But like when I'd leave you, I'd be thinking about what that problem is for you, and I nearly lived that experience. So I think that's, for me, that's the important piece, is being there, is to turn up no matter what happens. And I even saw last week a good friend of mine, his dad died suddenly, and he happened to be away in business in the UK. And I heard it through one of his colleagues, and, you know, he was down in Kilkenny, and I happened to be down that area, but I went down and I didn't know if he was even going to be there. And I found him, there's a story behind it, in the sense, I went to the house, I knew the type of car he drove. So I said, if I see the car, I'll go into his family's house. He lives in Limerick, but his parents and his dad had died. And I didn't see the car. And then there was a hotel up the road, just maybe half a kilometre up the road from his house. And I said, I'll drive him around, let's see if his car is there. And I drove him around, and no. So I said, his name is Carl, and I said, he mustn't be there. And just as I was leaving the car park, I saw this other car, and I saw this face of a guy jumping into it. It was him. No way. So I got the chance I actually stopped that other car coming out. I went up the one way in the car park, and he came out, and I just threw my hands around him and, said I was so sorry. But again, it's kind of being there. That's difficult for him and for me. But now when I look back at it, having done that, I'm a better person for that.
Yeah.
And I don't want anything for it other than it's been good for me. And I would like that to be reciprocated if I ever came to that.
Yeah.
And people have been there for me as well. And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So they're turning up for me as well. So I think in those moments, as you call it, that's the piece. And come as yourself, come naturally, do your very best, be honest. Look, I think even myself, we have different personas, don't we?
Of course, yeah.
And we're one thing to,
to family or to work, or it can be different.
Yeah.
But I think even the one thing you said there that really stands to me is that this idea, and a lot of people who've been on the show have said this already, this idea of following your gut instinct.
Right.
But what I even love about that is, particularly when in challenging times or things that happen in life, sometimes we need luck. And I find, we can say that I was so lucky that this just happened, or so lucky that this moment came, whatever it is. But with this idea of luck, I've personally have found that when you follow that gut instinct or that deeper gut that might be something uncomfortable, maybe like for you saying, oh, sure, I'm busy here with work, there's a lot going on. Do I have to, that story, as you said, the two sides of us can develop in your head nearly. But when you follow that gut instinct and almost the right thing to do here, that moments just like that just happen. It's like, gee, that happened by absolute luck. But to me, it's that gut instinct, following that brings these moments of luck or chance or hope more to life and to light. And for you on your own journey, would you've always, taught like that in terms of to follow that gut instinct? Would it always been something natural to you, or had it something like a moment in your life that had developed more of that clarity?
No, I think it does develop. And I think there is more clarity around it as you get older and more experience. But there's been major incidents in my life, and they're business related and they're family related and they're personally related. And I can remember in 1995, walked into an office and my boss said to me, we're making you redundant. So I had Terry, my wife, Colin and Clean at home. And this guy was telling me, you're out of a very good job, of which I had a lot of ambition to go a long way in the business. It was an American multinational. And that day, I'll never forget it. That room just spun. It was a panic attack. That's what it was when I got that. But now I look forward 30 years later, and we're celebrating our 30th year in our own business that came out of that we had to start up as a result of me being made redundant. So did I know at that time in my gut that was the right thing? No, far from it. It was the completely opposite, full of fear, full of panic, didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? It really knocked me for six. But as I said, what's come out of that is my own business and all the challenges I've gone through that. And it's been successful. And not because of me, it's me and it's the people around me, it's family, it's the team within in the company itself. But so out of that, is that luck or not luck? I'm not quite sure. But definitely, I think things happen in life for a reason. And if you can try and stay with it, it'll turn out for the best. So definitely, even there's a business perspective on what's happened to me. And I think it's meant to be as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was supposed to happen, and then this came by. Now, people have been made redundant and maybe never got back on the horse, and have always felt the pain of that because it is very difficult.
Of course. Yeah.
And I was a young man. I was at what age was I? In my 20s, and it was most difficult. But look at the good that's come out of that. And then obviously, when we talk about Cleana's foundation, I mean, there would be no foundation without there being a Cleana. And like, you know, just for the people that are listening in, you know, Cleana was our only daughter. She got diagnosed with a brain tumour when she was 7. And 8 years later, she died from that cancer of the brain. And who would want that? And like, how are you going to turn that into a positive situation? But it has. And you could never say that you wanted that to happen. You couldn't say that. But as a result of that having to happen, that we were able to turn that into a charity which now exists, that we can help so many families to kind of navigate their way through when they have a child that's got a serious or a terminal illness. So as you know, Dan, in the charity, we raise funds to give families time, financial. We raise funds to give money to families so they can spend time with their children in hospital or at home, whatever the case would be. And that sounds very simple, but we saw on our journey, and that was a journey with Cleana, that there were so many families that couldn't spend the amount of time that they needed to. And when I go back to my own business and I had a business partner, he allowed me to go to appointments with Cleana. He allowed me to be there on the tough days when, you know, there were scans being read. And eventually I left Cube. Cube is the business which I now own. That my business partner retired. And I left in July and I didn't go back till the following February. You know, I had that luxury, if that's what you want to call it, to spend those 6 months with Cleana in Cork, where she did die. So, very difficult times. And when I go back to that and going back to your initial question, the thing we had to do then was to turn up every day and go into that ward every single day for 6 months. We had to be literally dragged out of it. And it is about being there. And a lot of that time, Cleana wasn't even able to communicate with us. You know, at the beginning, it was just kind of our eyes were blinking, and eventually that all just stopped. And she was just there, you know, in a coma, I suppose. And but we kept turning up. We kept being there with her. We brought people in to see her, family members, her schoolmates all came to see her. They made tapes and we played them to her to try and wake her up. We tried everything. And but I've no regrets. Terry's no regrets. And anybody that's around us, family members or friends, and everybody that helped us to get through that journey, there's no regrets, because we did our best. As I said, we were there for her.
Yeah. And that's, like I said at the start of this podcast here, I knew when I met you that day, and Grania says as well, that we met someone special, and you and Terry. And why I say that is, you mentioned it there, even from the redundancy aspect there, and you mentioned it there earlier in terms of there's always two parts of us. Always.
Yeah.
You know, and that other part of you, if you were angry, bitter, annoyed, frustrated at the world, at God, at whatever, I don't think anyone would blame you for one moment. Not one moment. But there's something within you and within Terry, and I think within the heart of Cleana's, which is probably the essence of your own personalities manifested into the charity, of this ultimate belief that no matter what's happening in life, and do you know what, I'm going to rob this saying off you because I remember you said it before, is that you can't always be happy every day, but you can always find something to be grateful for in every day.
100%.
And I remember when you said that to me, something just stopped me, and I said, holy, for a man who's went through what he's went through with his daughter, and the pain and the sorrow to go through that, how has he managed to keep that other part of him still alive and not let the other one just rule over? How do you do that?
Look, as you said, there are two sides to this. There's the side that you see here right now, and there is the internals of how I operate. And I've plenty of challenges within my own mind, in between my own 2 ears. That if anything, and I spoke to Colin about that recently. Like, it's kind of nearly overthinking things, and that's me internally. But externally, in relation to, and it's not being false. I really am grateful. You know what I mean? And maybe we get back to it later. I actually lost some of that gratefulness about 18 months ago. I went through a very tough time personally, and we can get back to that. But gratitude is really important. And I was told that story about being grateful by a guy in the street in Dublin who had nothing. Who had lost everything. You could say that he was a down and out, right? And he found Christianity. And I'm in the print game, so when I got to meet these people, I'd always try to give back. And I like giving. It's very rewarding. It's more rewarding nearly than receiving. That's really nice too. So I used to do the print of their little leaflets. So when you walk across the street, these are the guys that had the leaflets, but he sat on the windowsill in my office, and that's it. You can't be happy all the time, but you can be grateful. So even though I've said it to you, I got that from somebody else, but it really resonated with me. And on my desk, I actually have that slogan in front of my PC that I keep looking at. And I did lose that for a while, and it was a very tough part of life. And it had to do with everything that was going on, the past, the present, and the future. But gratitude is certainly a huge part of it. I mean, is it right to say that you're even grateful to even have Cleanagh for a short time of like 15 years? The truth about it is, yes, even though it was only for 15 years, but look what it's done, and it's changed me, it's changed Terry, it's changed our family, it's changed so many things. And look at all the families that her life has impacted. We've almost 1,800 families in Ireland now supported, and raised over €4.5 million since we started the charity in 2008. And so a lot of good has come out of that situation. You can't compare it to that redundancy, but again, a very tough time. But look what's come out of it, and all the good. And it isn't me, it's Cleanagh coming out, and her character is in the charity there as well. And it's not, people would say that's what you would have wanted. I can't say that, but I would say that she was like that herself. That if she came home from hospital, if she'd met a child, she'd be on the phone ringing her to see how she was or how he was, and not about her own illness. And so some of those values she instilled in us, and then we just now give them back out through the charity itself and through our own lives.
It's amazing.
And like right now, today, I'm in the middle of making a huge decision in my own personal career. It's a difficult challenge because I'm emotionally involved in it, and I don't know what to do. Do you know what I mean? But I'm going to ask people around me to help me to make the right decision for the right reasons. And I don't have any regrets. That's the main thing. And to date, I don't have any regrets per se about my life. There's things I'd like to change. I can't. I need to accept that and move on. So, yeah, a lot going on.
I love that. And there's, in that bit alone there with Cleanagh, like, for someone to be in that situation and to ask others how are they getting on, what's their day like, what seems to come from you that just soothes out is this deeper, and I don't think if it's even a need or a want, but it's this almost feeling just to do the right thing and to look at the lens of life, not through yourself but others. And I remember hearing that line before, life is not about what you accumulate but what you cultivate.
Right.
And what seems to me in the pivotal moments of that particular part of the journey that obviously led to Cleanagh's passing, and and launching Cleana's Foundation was this ability to always look to do what's the right thing in this moment. And I remember you shared a story before that you were in the hospital and there was other families. Naturally, you start to get to know them through all the visits that you would be going to. I remember you shared one story that was the moment where it seemed to really click for you. Was you talked about yourself and Terry going to maybe a hotel that night, staying over, and then coming in the next morning, and you talked to someone else, another family there, and they talked about staying in the car that night because they couldn't afford a hotel because all the money was going towards trying to get their child healthy. And one person can hear that story, and it can, for you to be human, you have to feel something in that moment. Like you have to feel a sense of empathy. You have to feel something. But a lot of people will just feel that. But it takes someone different to feel that, but to do something about it. And what seems to me from you is you and Terry and Cleana's seem to be people that just don't feel something, but actively do it to make a difference and make a change. How do you keep that at the forefront? Because like you said earlier, at times it can probably be hard because you get so emotionally invested in people as well. How do you manage to, give to others while also not being, like a phone almost, giving out so much and there's not so much coming back, that you're able to maintain and keep doing that over time?
Yeah. It's not easy, first of all, because we did a documentary on Cleana's Foundation. We profiled 4 families, and we showed a video at a lunch in Cork on Friday, and it was about a dad. We told the stories in the documentary about families from different perspectives. So we told it from a dad, what it looked like from a dad's perspective on losing his child. And then we told another story through the eyes and lens of a grandfather. And then there was another boy that died, and we told it through the eyes of he was a triplet. So we told it through the eyes of his other 2 brother and sister. And then there was a general one that kind of captured everybody else, and it was a little boy called Padraig Beasley.
Remember,
yeah. And we got attached, and I could probably say to 4 or 5 families out of the 17 or 1800 that we've helped. But you couldn't get attached to all 1800. It's impossible.
Yeah.
But every time that you'd meet these people, every time you'd put yourself in that situation because you were in it yourself, Terry and I, and our family. And so when you're there trying to help these families, you actually put yourself in that place. What would it be like for you if you were in that situation, having to sleep in the car? Not being at home, having bills coming in the door. What would that feel like? Like, I didn't, and Terry didn't really have those challenges. We didn't, and that's now what we did, but we observed it. And I don't know if I ever told you that. And there was never supposed to be a charity. It was a one-off event that we said we'd raise some money, give it back to the people that were good to us, and then move on with our lives. But that hasn't stopped since. So the fund is still there, and it keeps growing. But when we were in St. John's ward, on the oncology ward, we'd driven up from Limerick, arrived in the ward, and when we went in the door came a husband and wife and a little baby, probably 6 months old, 9 months old, who also had cancer. And I asked the guy, I said, look, where did you come from today? It's a natural question. And he said, I came from County Waterford. And I said, well, we came up from Limerick, and we were talking away. And the next question I asked was, like, how did the journey go for you this morning? And he hesitated, and he didn't answer the question. And what I meant was the baby unwell?
Yeah.
And was she sick on the way up? Because that's part of the journey.
Part of the process.
When you're on chemotherapy and that, many times Clean would be in the back of the car, and if I was driving, Terry would be with her, or vice versa, depending on the form. And so that's what I was doing. But because we sat in that ward and both children were having chemotherapy, we got to know each other. And later on that day, he said, Brendan, I hesitated in relation to answering your question. He said, because I was embarrassed to say that, like when I drove up here today, I didn't come up in a car. He said, I borrowed the money to get a taxi to come from Waterford to Dublin. And that's how Cleaners Foundation started. I can still see that man. I can tell you what he was wearing. Do you know what I mean? I can see the plastic bag. I can see the anorak. I can see his wife. I can see that child. But particularly, I can still see him. And as I said, not knowing that we're going to have a charity, when somebody said, what are we going to do? He came into my mind. And that's how it really got going. And then we met all these different people. Like every time somebody applies to us, they write to us looking for the funds, and we make it very easy. But every time we started a kind of a ritual, if that's the right thing, of getting a photograph back of the child, maybe just to see them or pray for them or whatever that is. And the thank you notes that come back with the photographs, and which is still gone on, are just so humbling that they give you the inspiration to continue on, because every story is so, so difficult. And if you looked at all those 1,800 families, I mean, every one of them are deserving, and one story is as tough as the next. So it's Cleana's memory, what she went through, us being part of that journey, and kind of nearly reliving it in all those families without becoming too emotionally attached. Because if you do, I've done it with some of the dads, and it's difficult. There is support in that because somebody else is going through that journey as well, but you have to mind yourself as well, like emotionally.
Yeah, and it's hard because when you're so emotionally invested in something as well, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be the foundation. I'm emotionally invested in my own business. It's 30 years old now, and I need to look at what's next for me, for my family, and making tough decisions even on business life and life in general. Yeah, it's not straightforward, but we'll have to hope that we make the right decisions. And look, some of it is comfort and fear and not wanting to get out of your comfort zone. And I think maybe today, like, hold on, like, this is irony. Maybe today is why I'm here, because it's a day in my life that, I'm on the cusp of having to make a big decision. And part of me is afraid and fearful. Like I spoke to you earlier on, there are things that are inside me that I have those weaknesses, despite the persona that you see, even though everything I'm telling you is honest and truthfully, but behind that is a guy that does worry about things, that does have fear, deeply emotional about things. I live people's experiences. That's how I am. But I'm here today talking to you about something maybe I'm going to find the answer for. And it's been 250 kilometers away from me from where a decision's been made. Maybe, isn't that like, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've loads of things going on, good and bad and different in our own family at the moment, and you have to be there for others. But as I would say to them, I hope they'll be there for me too when I need them, and they have already been there. So,
and do you feel like, on that because when you say that to me, like, I'm like, how would be worried about making decisions here? The amount of decisions you have made over the course of your life, and hard decisions to make in different contexts, whether that's between Cleaners, whether that's between the business, whether that's between getting redundant, and that's general family stuff that we all in life go through as well. You've made so many decisions. So what has helped you before in them moments where it's been hard to make a decision, to get clarity on what do I do here?
I'm in a way impulsive as well. And I kind of do things kind of like that. So a lot of stuff that I would have done and decisions I would have made, I wouldn't even have thought about them.
Yeah.
And I would say, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And sometimes against everybody's best judgment.
But do you think that comes back to that gut thing you mentioned?
It's part of it, definitely is. Like, when when we started the business in 96, when in 2009 the crash for us came, it was a bit earlier for other people, but our crash came because our biggest client was Dell Computers, right? And they were massive. They could have been 74 or 5% of our business. Michael Dell said, we're leaving Limerick. We'd 50 plus staff in Cube. And like, I was one of the guys that had to go and tip them on the shoulder, 40 of them, and say, guys, we're going to lose 40 jobs here. We're going to get back down to 12. And we've got to rebuild that business back up to where it is today. And so the point I'm trying to make to you is that sometimes you just have to do things to survive. But I would be also thinking about those people that got tapped on the shoulders. We actually brought all of those people back into that business when we rebuilt it. But even though we paid them redundancy. And for me, there was a huge lesson in that in life, is never rely on any one thing. You know, make sure you got plenty of avenues to get yourself out of difficult situations. And that could be just having good friends. And I would have very few good friends, but I do have some very close friends. I've great relationship with family and immediate and extended family, and all of those things, you know, have helped me to get to who I am today. And I'm still, even though I'm in my 60th year now, or 62nd year, I'm still learning all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
We all are, aren't we? Like, and what stands to me, a big element of all that is vulnerability. You know, when we hear, particularly in the context environments I do be in, you know, whether it's working with athletes and they're trying to win an All-Ireland, or even just everyday people who are going through different challenges and obstacles in life. Vulnerability, when we hear that word first, we don't associate that with strength. You know, we often associate that word vulnerability with a sign of you're not able, you know, you can't manage this, or you're not good enough. But if we look at everything you've spoke about there today, if that one piece, just vulnerability alone, none of all the other things could have happened. You know, from you being open, being honest, just speaking what you're feeling, speaking what's going on. How important do you think vulnerability is from that aspect, if you want to call it from a performance aspect or an overall aspect of just getting to more to where you want to be in life, or for things to happen?
I don't think you can grow if you're not vulnerable. That's for me now. I suppose the less vulnerable you are, the more. I'm not saying you can't be successful and have all those things, but if you're not, there's no growth in it. So isn't it all these challenges in life that's brought me to where I am today? I think being vulnerable can be good for you when you look back on it. Going through it, no way.
No, not when you're in it.
Not when you're in it.
No.
But like without having that vulnerability, I mean, how can one genuinely grow?
Yeah.
It's impossible, isn't it?
You've no honesty really with yourself.
Yeah.
Is there not?
Yeah. I'm a bit too hard on myself at times, though.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
The same as well.
Yeah. Well, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
And
I find it hard with that, because, you know, I know vulnerability is so hard, but I know vulnerability is the most fundamental thing, but sometimes I would struggle to be vulnerable because there's a natural instinct, because I'm hard on myself as well, that I'd be like, look like you have it together, Dan, look like you have it sorted here, keep going, keep pushing, you can get through this on your own. And, you know, I'd be quite maybe stubborn in a way at times.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've often found when I'm not vulnerable and not that open and honest with myself, two things either happen. Number one, more things start to compound on the things that I'm already struggling or finding hard and tough. And it's like another thing compounds on top of that. And the way I describe it's like an athlete, when you make a mistake, you give out to yourself and you beat yourself up, and then what happens? You probably do it again and then again and then again. So to me, that's one thing that happens. But the other thing that often happens is I stay so stuck in that for maybe days or weeks or months or years, that inevitably end up coming back to just having been vulnerable and say, this is what's happened to me, this is what I'm going on, this is what I'm feeling. And once you do it, it's like this clarity just removes itself. Because I find the weight of that, and it's kind of maybe similar to that example of the man you met that time getting the taxi from Waterford. You know, he was afraid to be vulnerable. When he did, it probably released, so much tension there that we often build up.
See, if you're vulnerable to everybody, right, you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, great point.
You are.
Yeah.
But you should allow yourself to be vulnerable with those that you can trust, that you love, and that they really know who you are.
The people that matter.
Yeah. So the people that matter are the people that are very close to you, and that you've shared stuff with them that you wouldn't share with anybody else, no matter what happens. So you've got to be careful about that, because people will take advantage of you then. And I'm saying they will take advantage of you, Brendan. Do you know what I mean? And I've seen that. And like, I've made decisions for the best of intentions in business that I was putting, and I tend to do that a lot, put myself in their shoes, and would have introduced benefits to people and would have been lenient on certain things and flexible about decisions and stuff like that. And even though I'm not going to change, and I never will change, very few respect that, and very few appreciate that. But I try to discount that and say I did it because that's what I would like to have been done for me. And so, is that being vulnerable? It is, and it isn't. Would I change that style? Now, in some cases I would. But I read recently, or I heard recently, something that I was reading or on Audible, but he was kind of saying, no, it wasn't. It was Dennis O'Brien. He said it recently. He said, if you have a problem with somebody, the worst thing you can do is not go and deal with it, because the long-term consequences far outweigh the benefits. So the point I'm trying to make to you is I tend to leave those things go. And if you do leave them go, right, they're going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, to bite you.
Right? And that can be internally in your own mind, like you described, or it can be externally in situation where somebody sees you being vulnerable, and then you're going, oh my God, if I was tougher in that situation, I wouldn't have ended up where I am. But the opposite side to that is I allow people to make decisions about a lot of things in my life and leave it to them, even though it directly impacts me. And there are good points to that, and there are negative points to that. So, like, I would have handed over the running of my own business to somebody else and really trusted them, and found that I have less impact even as the owner than they actually have now. That's a tough thing, and that's making us very vulnerable. And you can apply that then to life and to the charity itself. So it's a very delicate one. So be vulnerable, but be careful who you're vulnerable with. Do you know what I mean?
It is,
and
a really
particularly
good point.
yourself. And I beat myself up all the time.
Yeah.
And as you said, when you get through all the stuff, and it can be weeks, months, and years, you come back to saying, "Oh, right, I've learned from that."
Yeah, I love it. And for your journey as well, and the reason why I ask this question is that for a lot of us, depending on the stage of the journey we're life in, if you ask that question at different stages throughout our life, we probably answer it very differently. But the question I'd love to ask you is, what do you define, what does success mean to you?
I suppose, like you spoke there about sport and business and life and all that. So I've had a lot of achievements, even small ones, like learning how to swim and going into triathlons. And I did Olympic triathlons, Olympic distance, not Olympic. And so they're great achievements, and I'm very proud of them. And I'd like to think that I have done things in my personal life that that you know what I mean, that I've achieved things that really are, that I'm really grateful and proud of, and even going back to the business, having built all of that. And that's very important. And achievement is something that's great. But it's the impact of what I've achieved and will leave in my life is more important than all of those things. So the impact that I will leave on other people, on my family that I leave behind, and a legacy maybe with a business that I started, the legacy of Cleanance Foundation, is the impact of that, not alone in my lifetime, but in the future. I think that's greater than any achievement that you can have in this life. Yeah, achievements are short-lived and enjoyable, and you should celebrate them, and you really should. But what's the impact of them going to be for you maybe in the next 10 years or 20 years, 30 years, please God, or after your lifetime? And there can be short impacts, like something you could do today that could affect somebody right away.
Yeah.
By being there for them and caring and being open and, you know, empathizing and really nearly living their journey with them. That way outweighs any achievement. So I'll have to say it's the impact of what I'm going to leave with people themselves, of what I've hopefully done for them, or the way I've loved them or hated them, or whatever the case would be. And the same then when it comes to business and obviously the charity. So
I love that.
It's hopefully it's the impact. And look, then it's all tied in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't the gratitude, the gut feeling, destiny, good things turning out to be great things? It's all tied in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it is, and
the thing about it is, I don't have the answers.
none of us do really.
No, that's what I'm saying. When
Yeah.
I'm speaking plurally, none of us have. But if you're there, when I go back to what you asked me earlier on, if you're there, if you turn up,
Yeah.
and you turn up and you turn up and you turn up, sure, isn't that all you can do?
Yeah.
Even for yourself internally.
Yeah, completely. And I think to kind of capitalize on that bit there as well, it's turning up in them moments that do matter, and it's probably my challenge and your challenge not to beat yourself up at times when you miss the moments that do matter as well, because we're human too. You know,
True.
we're not perfect, and we don't know all the answers, but I do believe the answer is always inside us. I think it's always within there, and I think that's why you inspire me so much, from them moments that are really hard to look for what is the answer within and having the courage to go for that. And I think that's why I love that definition of success that you gave, and that's what just oozes out of you and the charity and Terry as well, is impact on others.
Yeah.
You know, you if you go into a business, or if you go into a sports team and you ask them what does success mean, they probably will say win the championship, or accumulating X amount of revenue this year. But often when you hear the great teams and the great businesses, they talk about the impact on other people. And I feel when we are more connected to that, on our purpose being not to just get stuff for ourselves or out of our own life or to accumulate more, but to make a difference in people's lives. And you said it can be as simple as, if you're going, I know for Granny's dad, sometimes he goes through the toll, he'll pay for his own toll and then pay for the person behind them.
Okay.
And Grania talks about that when she was 4 years old, but she still remembers it to this day, because it's them small little moments that might seem mundane and might seem, but these all, like you said earlier, they're all connected, you know, whether it's destiny, whether it's gut feeling, they all bring us more into what I think we are ultimately here to do in life, which is to impact each other on a positive way. How do you stay in that space?
How do you stay in that space? I suppose it's about being yourself, isn't it? As much as you can. But being careful about sharing that too openly as well.
Yeah.
You've got to protect that. But genuinely, I would feel to stay in that space is to kind of be who you are. And the people that really know who you are your really close family members and your really close friends. And you know, a lot of people think they know me, but they don't really. They see the outcomes and even the achievement side, but and I'm very proud of that. Don't get me wrong; you have to have those,
Of course.
But and I don't always stay in that mode. I mean, I have to try and, you know, I've got to try and keep myself going as well. I find life very challenging. I really do, despite what I find it challenging, but the way I get kind of peace of mind is actually nearly being there for people and trying to help them, maybe to try and take away from my own internal, you know, problems, if that's what you want to call them.
Yeah.
So it's just being honest and being who I am. That's how I'm made. I'm not anything special, and I think, again, going back to that, keep turning up. I saw it with my own business that I went there every day, stayed there long hours. Okay, it's cut back now. But that took 25, 27, 28 years to get into that situation. So, you know, you've got to put the work in as well, and you've got to be there all the time. And again, that's for me how you stay in that moment,
In that space, yeah.
But then I have to be honest, when the door is closed and I'm on my own, do you know what I mean? I could be
Don't talk to me, no one could hear me.
you know, do you know what I mean? I beat myself up too much, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really important that we're honest with ourselves in that, like, because again, we're all human, and to be human is to be imperfect. And right, I'd love to give you 3 quick fire questions. You might enjoy the quick fire ones. Now, I know you're giving out about the other questions away, but you didn't do too bad there. Now we'll give you that, Brendan.
Yeah.
Right. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Wow. Best piece of advice I've ever received. I know from a business perspective, and I got this very earlier on, and I worked for an American company, as I said, and my boss was an American, and I used to have to go to meetings where I was walking into rooms with guys that were, and women that were 30 years my senior, and trying to make the best decisions for the company, and, you know, working with these people, being tough with these people to a degree, because it was cutthroat. And he'd always say to me before I went in, he said, Brendan, all those people, at least the men, they all put on their pants the same way as you did in the morning. So that was a lovely piece of advice. And I still play on that. Do you know what I mean? So, like, we're all the same. There is nobody, in my eyes, greater or less than I am. And I have that innate ability, actually, even outside that statement, to try and see everybody at the same. I hate this thing about he's better than her or she's better. I don't like that. Do you know what I mean? We're all human beings. We're all trying to do our best. Okay, there's people out there that are not. But even for those people, let it off. So that was certainly something from a business point of view would have stayed with me. Like, the best bit of advice I could have got, which would have given me over a long period of time in my family, was unity. I was brought up on that by both my parents. Despite everything that's going to happen within your family unit, you got to stay united. And there's been lots of times when, you know, we wouldn't want to do that with each other, you know, our siblings and so forth. But that was one thing, to keep united. It doesn't matter who goes astray, what happens. You might be put out by it, they might be put out by me, but that theme runs through our family, to try and stay united at all costs. And again, I think we've done a good job on that as a family. So that would have been a great kind of virtue to have been left from my parents, and both taught that way. Sometimes you may have not taught that, but that's how we try to live.
Sticks there.
And try and stay unified. You know, we've all made mistakes. I've made them, and deep down, if you can keep that family united together, and for even myself in my own personal life, I've also lost two brothers along my lifetime. One at 34 years of age, and one at 45, and obviously I've lost Cliona. Those three episodes have left a huge impact on me. You know what I mean? And it's the learnings out of their passings. And my brother had an engineering business, and even though we tried to keep it going, we couldn't, because he was the business. So I learned from that. I said, don't let your business be you, or don't let the charity be you, or don't let you be you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you do, what happens is something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
so
that.
they're lifelong lessons.
Brilliant. Love that. One thing you wish you were told, or a question you wish you were asked when you were younger?
I think it's kind of understanding that impact piece. I wouldn't have said that to you 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
No way.
No, it would all back then have been about, let's do more sales, let's get more done. Do you know what I mean? It was the achievement that was keeping me going. But as I got older, it's the impact of that is the main thing. So your question was what?
One thing you wish you were told, or a question you wish you were asked when you were younger? Do you think
from a personal point of view, is to plan for the future, if there is a future, and nearly see what that looks like for you, albeit that you've got no control over it. So I think if I give a little bit more thought to that, I might have made better decisions.
Yeah.
I think I would. And I think if it comes from a business point of view, I found out something maybe 3 or 4 years ago about my business, right? That if I'd known going into business and got ready for that day, I'd be much more prepared than I am now. So is that leaving a legacy behind on a personal basis, or when it comes to a business or the charity, do you have to have an exit strategy worked out in advance of wanting to try and plot where you're going to go, despite the fact that life throws these curveballs? I think if I'd known a little bit more about that, I might have made other decisions. Would have things ended up better or worse? I don't know. But I definitely think that's something that I learned at the end when I should have been thinking about it
at the beginning.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
not quite at the beginning, but
Yeah.
I mean, I never realised really, it might be foolish of me, is that a lot of businesses started, and the only reason they started is how they're going to be got rid of or exited.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have never thought like that, because I'm so emotionally attached to things that take me out in the brown box. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? And that might be not the solution. I'm only learning that now.
Yeah.
And I have to struggle with that.
Yeah.
So I suppose they'd be two things then for me.
Love it. Brilliant. And it's funny you said that, because even by saying, impact, I thought that'd be the first thing you would have said, but I love it. Last one. If people took one thing away from this conversation we've had today, what one thing would that be, and why?
Wear your heart on your sleeve, I suppose, really. But only do that with the people that you trust and love. Try and do your best in life. And that goes back to one of your questions. My dad was, he was a hard man, you know what I mean? But and I know we all say it in their cliches, but he'd always say, in fairness to him, like, you can only do your best. Do you know what I mean? But like, don't just pay lip service to that.
Yeah.
Just don't pay lip service to that. Really work on that. Do you know what I mean? Do your best. Even to those that may hurt you, or situations that people, when they see your vulnerability, as we spoke about earlier on, take advantage of it. Be yourself, try and do your best. and that's all you can do. So I suppose that's the takeaway for me. And we talked about the gut feeling earlier on, instinct. I think that comes with maturity and age and experience. Work on that. But I suppose I lost it for a while. It's on its way back. But the best of them all, and the one that I have to stand by is, you can't be happy every day, but you certainly can be grateful.
Love it. Just to finish off, where can people hear more about Cleaners or get involved or anything that's coming up? And the reason I say this is we got involved. I never knew anything about charity. I never knew anything about you. We've a mad mutual friend now called Dickie Reddy,
yeah.
who tends to rope us into some madness every now and again.
Dickie.
And it was only through him I found out about the charity. But
that's right.
That day, as I said, connected with me, and that's why I think it's a really good. Every charity is amazing. Every charity has a place and a power and a purpose. But this charity, there's something different and magical about it. So where can people hear about, maybe find out more about Cleaners or stuff that's going on?
Well, the first thing then is, right, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, but I've gone to thousands of events. That day still stands out as one of the most connectivity. We all got on. We didn't know each other. It was mad.
Well, it's mad.
And we came way up the country to do it. And when they say before, you mightn't talk to somebody for years, but they're forever lifelong friends. You know what I mean? And that's what I got out of that. And that was genuinely one of the highlights. And there's been lots, but that genuinely was a great day. It was powerful. But you know why? I think people like yourself are very honest, and you left your emotions out as well on the day, and you spoke, about how you felt, and Dickie did as well, and I think we all did. It kind of filtered through the room, didn't it? And next minute we
gives people permission nearly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's it. So I'm grateful for that. Really am. From a personal point of view and for the charity. Look, to get in contact with the charity, first of all, right, I do an awful lot of asking for the charity, but the main reason the charity is to give, right? So if anybody is listening that knows of a family that are struggling financially, that may have sick child, the number one thing for us, the vision of this charity, is to give money to families that need support. If there are people out there that can help us to give them that money, we would love your help. And it's simple. It's just visit cleaners.ie. And on there is everything we've done, what we're doing, events that are coming up. You'll see the map of the number of families we've helped all over the country, from north and south. And I'm glad to say that it's a 32 county charity. If anybody has anybody that they know that needs our help, we are always there for them. And the great thing about Cleaners, when everybody meets the criteria in relation to the child's age and sickness and all that, we have never refused anybody since it started, and the money has always come and turned up. Thank God.
Amazing.
Thank God.
Brendan, you're a gent. Thanks so much for your time, your energy, your wealth of experience and knowledge, and I know it's going to really help and impact people in the moments that really do matter. So I really appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.